The New York Times out with a story saying a decongestant in many cold medicines is ineffective, according to an FDA Advisory Committee. And also this week, the CDC endorsing COVID-19 boosters for everyone ages 6 months and older as cases rise and a new variant takes hold. Here now to discuss, Dr. Scott Gottlieb, former FDA commissioner, CNBC contributor, and board member, I believe, at Pfizer. I'm right on that, aren't I, Scott?
That's right.
All right, fantastic. Let's start with phenylephrine, which is the ingredient in question here that kind of replaced decongestants with pseudoephedrine, which went sort of behind the counter. Am I right here? And why are we now finding out, belatedly, years later, that phenylephrine may not be effective?
Yeah, that's exactly right. So back in the 2006, 2007 timeframe, pseudoephedrine was put behind the counter because it was believed that people were making methamphetamine from it. Now, the methamphetamine crisis really has resulted from the drug product coming across the border with Mexico and not necessarily people manufacturing it off pseudoephedrine. But nonetheless, that product was put behind the counter. Before that event, phenylephrine was, I wouldn't say a seldom used product, but it wasn't as widely used as it is now, certainly. After pseudoephedrine was put behind the counter, phenylephrine became more widely used as companies reformulated their cough and cold medicines with phenylephrine in it. Now, this was never believed to be a very effective product. The presumption always was that it was weakly active and it was short-acting. The effect lasts about 4 hours with oral phenylephrine. But it was believed to be active nonetheless. We looked at this very closely back in 2006, 2007, when Sudafed was initially put behind the counter. But the studies were never really well done by modern standards. There's been some subsequent studies since then, none of which have really shown a strong treatment effect. And so it's caused FDA to re-adjudicate this, reassess it, and come to the conclusion that the advisory committee did that there's no strong evidence suggesting that this drug's effective. Now, that said, there were a lot of methodological problems with the studies that looked at the efficacy of this drug, not least of which was that it looked at patients with allergic rhinitis, which we know it doesn't work in that setting. There were small studies, and the finding of nasal congestion itself is a very subjective finding, especially for a short-acting drug. So it would take a very large, well-powered study to really tease apart a treatment effect here, and we just don't have that kind of evidence.
So if I have a cold or flu and I have nasal congestion, what should I do about it? Should I just use some Afrin or something like that, an over-the-counter nasal spray that does the trick?
Well, look, I still believe personally that with the totality of the evidence that phenylephrine probably is providing a treatment effect here, albeit a small one and a short-acting one, so it's not providing long-term relief. But I think it is providing an incremental benefit for some patients. But if, in fact, this product isn't available or people don't want to use it now, and just keep in mind the FDA didn't raise any safety questions about the product. So the product's safe. It's just a question of how much efficacy is it delivering. But if people don't want to use it or it becomes harder to get, there's other products on the market, all of which have shortcomings. You can use nasal preparations like nasal steroids. You can use things like Afrin, which has oxymetazoline in it. That can cause rebound if you use it for a prolonged period of time. I suspect if phenylephrine's taken off the market, you're also going to see more homeopathy put on the store shelves, on cough and cold aisles, which is providing probably no benefit at all. So I'm not sure that there's a really good alternative here for an oral formulation that can provide some incremental benefit. Now, all that said, I don't think FDA is going to withdraw these products from the market. I think in all likelihood what the agency is going to do is probably relabel them to maybe take out the indication for allergic rhinitis, which is an indication that we know these products don't work in. They only work in the setting of a common cold causing some transient nasal congestion.
Is pseudoephedrine more effective, the stuff that has been put behind the counter? Is it more effective, and should I ask for that?
That's certainly the case. I mean, I would, if a consumer doesn't have side effects associated with pseudoephedrine, that certainly is a more effective product. Now, it's more expensive. It's behind the counter now. Prices have gone up since it's been positioned there. And that's part of the challenge, having something accessible for people to relieve some of the symptoms of a cold so that you can improve productivity and just general well-being.
Dr. Gottlieb, maybe I'm not the only one slightly confused about what to do on the COVID front now. The cases are everywhere, all around us. But there's some misunderstanding about whether if you've had the boosters, I guess going back a year or two ago, are you fully boosted? How long until they wear off? Do you need the new boosters? and so on and so forth. What's the latest advice?
Well, look, I think these COVID vaccines are going to be like a flu paradigm in terms of receiving updated boosters on an annualized basis to have protection for that season. We know that matching the vaccine to the current variants provides some incremental protection in terms of protection against infection. And we also know that recency matters. Having a recent vaccine and also a recent infection, for that matter, provides stronger protection. The protection from the vaccines do wear off over time. I think you can expect to get 3-4 months of more robust protection from a recent vaccine. After that, the protection against infection is going to decline. You'll still have some residual protection against getting more symptomatic and severe disease. So for people who need the protection, people who are at risk, people who want to reduce their chance of getting infected, to the extent the vaccines still do that, but on less of a basis, certainly, than they did when they first came out, getting an updated vaccine this fall is something that's prudent. And I would urge everyone to consult with their physicians and make an informed choice about whether or not they're going to get an updated vaccine.